Hello, I'm Kamal Santamaria. This is Counting the Cost on Al Jazeera, your weekly look at the world of business and economics. This week, South Africa. It's an economy under threat, slowing growth, ratings agencies threatening junk status, and now a bailout for its biggest power supplier. With rolling blackouts now the norm, what'll it take to switch South Africa's lights back on? Also this week, Azerbaijan prepares for the inaugural European Games, but it's not a great time there either. Oil prices have slumped. Baku's been forced to devalue its currency. We'll hear from one of the organisers about making the Games work. And what's next for Apple, Google and Uber? Will they challenge the big players in the car business? And should they be worried? The CEO of Renault NISSAN tells us what he thinks. Do you remember the BRIC nations? Brazil, Russia, India and China, all the darlings of the investment world last decade. But right now, like a brick, these economies have got that sinking feeling. And then a few years ago, you may also remember when BRIC became BRICS with the addition of South Africa. And unfortunately, Africa's second largest economy isn't in much better shape. And that's the focus of our show this week. What does South Africa have to do to arrest the downward slide? You know, the South African economy only grew 1.5% last year, its slowest pace since 2009. One factor was the labour strikes in the mining sector, which is, of course, so important to the economy. But more recently, power cuts have become a big problem. In fact, things looked so bad for the largest power generator, Eskom. The South African government had to provide a $2 billion bailout. All told, the financial services group Efficient believes the economy's lost $25 billion because of the electricity shortages, or, put another way, 1 million jobs since 2008, which are desperately needed in a country where unemployment's at 25%. The question now is, will all this impact on South Africa's National Development Plan, which is looking to spend $72 billion over the next 3 years on infrastructure? And on top of all of that, South Africa's debt status could be cut to junk by the ratings agencies, and the finance minister needs to slash the country's public sector wage bill. Now, how do you counter all that when even the power is unreliable? We mentioned the electricity blackouts earlier, and we're going to focus on that just now before delving further into the economy. Here's our report from Erica Wood in Johannesburg.
South Africa's power stations are old and can no longer cope with demand. New ones are being built, but it'll be some time before they're online. Eskom, the state-owned energy company, has warned people and industry they'll have to endure regular power outages.
Well, all of us are worried, and we have given them our word that we are working on restoring the stability of the power system, but it's going to be a long and painful process, I'm afraid.
South Africa's Chamber of Commerce says any interruption to the electricity supply is not good for foreign investment.
We're very concerned about the impact that this could have on international investment. If you're going to invest, you need to have a secure supply of energy, and it needs to be at a reasonable cost. And that certainly might be a tipping force for a decision not to invest. That reasonable cost is set to rise in April by 13%. Eskom has justified the hike by saying it still has some of the world's cheapest energy. But for owners of South Africa's energy-hungry industries like mines and factories, that cheap power is only useful if it's switched on. Eskom says it's given big business fair warning and asked them to cut down on their electricity needs or even generate their own. Sasol, a company that turns coal into oil, has done even more.
We have installed enough equipment to generate up to 70% of our own power requirements in the form of various equipment, from steam stations to gas-fired turbines to gas-fired power plants.
But asking industry to provide its own electricity is potentially damaging to South Africa's reputation as one of Africa's most stable and economically advanced.
Many of our partners are working together with us to find a lasting solution to this issue.
It's kind of a bit late though, isn't it?
It is kind of a bit late. I do acknowledge that.
South Africa's growth slumped to just 1.5% last year, which means it's already lagging behind other countries on the continent. It's too early to tell whether this will have a massive impact on international investment, but in a country that already suffers from regular labour strikes, a power shortage could make companies think twice about coming here. Erica Wood for Counting the Cost, Johannesburg.
Well, let's talk more about South Africa's economy with a man who deals directly with its economy and its people. Ben KRUGER joining us from Johannesburg. He's the co-chief executive of Standard Bank there. Ben, it looks like you've put out some pretty good profit numbers for the past year. You've also paid a dividend to your shareholders, so that's great. I'm interested to know how you managed to do that in what is definitely a weakening economy.
Thank you, Kamal. Yes, indeed it is. South Africa has been somewhat challenged in the last year, as you rightly put it. I think the star of the show for us have been our businesses in the 20 countries in Africa where we operate from. We have seen pretty good growth in East Africa, West Africa, and even the Southern African cluster of countries around South Africa for the year. You know, many of these economies are growing in rates of excess of 5% at this point in time.
So if it is the rest of Africa that's driving your business at the moment, are you worried or are you concerned about your home business in South Africa and how it's been impacted by the slowdown?
No, if we look at South Africa at the macro level, we are not that concerned. Clearly, we have lived and we call this home, and so we understand the economy quite well. On the negative side, electricity has been a constraint in the country, and we would calculate that that's at least a 1% negative impact on GDP, which in a country with low growth and high unemployment clearly is a concern. In addition to that, South Africa tended to be a very high energy demanding economy, and there's a lot of work being done to try and shift that away to a more balanced energy type consuming economy. On the positive side, the price of oil has had a very big positive impact on South Africa, and we calculate that to be between 1 and 1.5% positive adjustment to GDP. And then just looking at the way people readjust their lives and deal with electricity, I think with a very clear scheduled program of when there will be terminations of electricity in certain areas, people have rearranged their lives and have learned to cope with that. I think if it goes to a higher stage of disruption, that clearly will be more negative. But it is, on balance, it still is negative. It's not great for the economy, but it's not as debilitating as we've seen. Clearly, our concern is actually much wider than that. From a country perspective, we really need to get structurally in a position where we can grow at in excess of 4% if we want to make a dent in unemployment and poverty in the country in any meaningful way. And that remains a challenge for the government, for us in business, and I think for every South African to try and get our productivity up and operate at that level.
I just wonder, Ben, and not to go on too much about the blackout situation, but you talked about how people have adjusted their lives accordingly because of these the blackouts. How does your business adjust accordingly? You've got ATMs, branches. Access to money is fundamental.
Absolutely right, and we are fairly fortunate in that we are a fairly low energy consuming type company. And many of our buildings have converted to higher status of green buildings in our head offices and so forth. But we do have generators in all of our branches, and clearly there's a cost associated with that. It is a big cost for us. It is more complicated for higher energy consuming type industries, such as the mining industries or smelters or people like that. And it is very difficult. Even though when I was talking to some retailers the other day. Some of the retailers now have generators in all of their outlets, even if they're in big shopping malls. And the complication for them is even if they open, when people arrive at a mall or they see the mall slightly dark, they actually change their patterns and they come back when there's no scheduled blackout. And so even if you do have the capacity to deal with it, it is complicated. So we do tend to focus on that. But it is very, very demanding on systems infrastructure, network infrastructure, all of these things with systems booting up and down for many companies that don't have the same resilience built into their systems. It is very complicated.
Yeah, that's quite fascinating, actually. Can I move on and sort of pick your economic brain now? I want to get your feeling about the state of the country. There are issues such as debt to GDP ratios rising. We've mentioned in the programme debt could be cut to junk status by the ratings agencies. Are you happy that the South African government is doing the right sorts of things to address this, that there is the right kind of spending going on?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and we clearly had the new Minister of Finance present his budget speech last week, and I think he did a really good job of trying to balance the requirements and the demands in the country with what is feasible, and trying to balance the requirements from a capital market point of view for the country and its debt in the medium term. Now, clearly, this is a very complicated balancing act, and you saw him increasing taxes at the highest level somewhat, and then increasing some of the taxes on fuel and so forth, which clearly, with a big reduction in the fuel price, motorists and consumers won't feel the pain as much. They'll just have a slightly lower reduction in the cost of fuel. But in the medium term, I think the big ponderables on the horizon would be the labour situation in South Africa. I think for the big public sector wage negotiations coming up, this is going to be quite a demanding round, and the government is quite focused on curtailing and maintaining their spending within a certain range, and I think the unions seem to be fairly set on pushing that quite higher, and so that is an uncertainty, I think, in the very near term.
Ben KRUGER on the state of the South African economy right now. Great talking to you, Ben. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamal.
And still ahead on Counting the Cost, the tech companies which have become part of our everyday lives now want us to drive with them as well. Is the car industry worried? We'll find out a little later on. Now, if you didn't know, there's a new event on the international sporting calendar this year, the European Games, which will have its inaugural outing in Baku, the capital of Azerbaijan, in June. 50 countries, 20 sports, 6,000 plus athletes. All so far so good. But Azerbaijan, like so many nations dependent on commodities, has got some problems right now. Oil makes up 95% of its exports, 75% of its revenue. So with the price of oil as low as it is, that spells trouble. The currency's been devalued by a third, budgets are tight, all at a time when Azerbaijan wants to show off its capital city to the world. Simon Clegg is the Chief Operating Officer of Baku 2015. He spoke to our sports presenter Joanna Gazirovska about the importance of these games to Azerbaijan.
Well, first of all, I think there's a real need to have a European Games. We need to recognise that Europe is the only continent in the world that doesn't have its own major multi-sport event for the best athletes of the continent. There's been a Pan-American Games and a Nation Games since 1951. And despite the athletic strength or athletic prowess and the commercial strength of Europe, there has never been an event for the best athletes in Europe. Azerbaijan took the initiative through the leadership of President Ilham Aliyev, the President of the Republic of Azerbaijan, who was the President of his National Olympic Committee before he became President of the Republic. And so he understands sport. He realises the potential for sport and what it can deliver in terms of political terms. And therefore, I think it's a very exciting opportunity to deliver the first ever European Games here in Baku this summer.
And what can it deliver for Baku and Azerbaijan? What do they get out of hosting the first European Games?
Well, first of all, the prestige of hosting the inaugural European Games. This is a fantastic new event. Someone has described it last week as probably the most important new global sports event in the last 50 years. But as far as Azerbaijan is concerned, this allows it to help diversify its economy into tourism and into sports tourism in particular. We only need to look at the next couple of years with Azerbaijan and Baku hosting Formula One, Islamic Solidarity Games, Chess Olympiad and 4 matches of Euro 2020. So really a great future ahead of it. But it's also about physical legacy and human legacy that are being delivered as a result of these games.
And you mentioned that Azerbaijan's president is known to be a great supporter of the games coming to Azerbaijan. How hands-on has he been?
Well, he's obviously an incredibly busy man, but he comes from sport, as I mentioned a moment ago, and therefore he understands sport, and he's been to a number of Olympic Games himself with the Azerbaijani National Olympic Committee, so he understands some of the detail and some of the practical issues that have to go in and be put in place to deliver an event of this scale. I mean, we're talking about 6,000 athletes, 20 different sports, so this is a major new initiative.
Recently, Amnesty International released a report that talked about the repression of journalists and activists in the lead up to the Games. The people were largely calling for a boycott of the Games to draw attention to human rights violations. Another human rights group also said that Azerbaijan were using the Games to whitewash the country's reputation. How do you respond to that?
Well, I'm focused on delivering a sporting event, and believe me, with 99 days to go until the opening ceremony, we still have a huge amount to do here in Azerbaijan. I think that the hosting of the European Games embodies all the massive progress that this young and dynamic country has made, just 23 years since it became independent. And I think that the staging of the European Games here in Azerbaijan will showcase Azerbaijan to the world and show its potential.
Let's talk about the economy in Azerbaijan. Oil and gas make up 95% of its exports, 75% of its revenue. So with the price of oil so low, what impact is that having on the Games, if any? And can Azerbaijan continue to pay for these 50 teams to travel there?
Well, in terms of answering the second part of your question to start with, I mean, obviously the funding of athletes and officials from the 50 participating countries coming to Azerbaijan was a precondition of the host city contract and Baku being awarded the Games back in December 2012. And we should never forget that this event is being delivered in just 30 months compared with the normal 7 years preparation time that an Olympic or an Olympic Winter Games host city would have. In terms of the diversification of the economy, and in particular the question relating to falling oil prices, of course that's something that we have been conscious of. And we have gone through a prudent review of our budget since the middle of last summer when the oil prices started to fall. And I'm confident that we can still deliver an outstanding event here in Baku later this summer based upon the budget that has been allocated to us.
Last month, the country devalued its currency and the price of goods and services are rising. Some analysts say that inflation could rise to 30% this year. Is the government worried? What are they doing to try and counter this?
Well, I'm not in a position to answer that question. I mean, I think that question that you've specifically asked needs to be directed to the government, and I'm not a spokesman for the government. I'm a spokesman for Baku 2015, and I need to focus on the sporting aspects of delivering this major new initiative.
Simon Clegg there, the Chief Operating Officer for Baku 2015. Thanks very much for speaking to us on Counting the Cost.
Now, it's been well documented how so many of our smartphones and other gadgets are manufactured in China these days. But what about Vietnam? It's emerging as an alternative to China with its tax incentives and cheaper workforce. Scott Heidler reports now from Hanoi.
Just 20 years ago, most Vietnamese earned their living from the land. But now, manufacturing has taken over agriculture. This land north of Hanoi used to grow tea. Just a small patch of plantation remains. Now, smartphones roll out by the millions. This is the growing manufacturing complex built by Samsung, the world's largest maker of smartphones last year. The company has already invested over $10 billion in Vietnam, and it's expanding. It employs 50,000 people. With a plentiful workforce, the government opened its doors to high-tech companies, looking to bring them from China, where a worker's average salary is 3 times that of Vietnam.
The cost of doing business in China now increase very fast. So in that sense, we try to have a better policy to attract the TNC, transnational company.
And that policy came in the form of big tax breaks. Samsung won't pay any for the first 4 years.
But Vietnam's move to become the global smartphone hub is not limited to huge multinationals moving here. One local manufacturer is jumping into the game, making their own smartphone.
BKAV will unveil its B phone in the coming months. The company sees industry leaders like Samsung setting up here as helpful to its business.
With the massive Samsung factory in Vietnam, it's an advantage for companies starting to make smartphones here. When they came, the supply companies for parts came too.
And that helps BKAV gain access to the same components as the top companies in the industry. And it will keep smartphone manufacturing costs down in Vietnam, enticing further investment.
As we all know, price of the smartphone is going to be dropped. So it keeps pressure on the manufacturing company to find location or find way to keep the cost low.
Other big manufacturers see Vietnam as a good option too. LG and Microsoft are also expanding here. With the ground in Vietnam so fertile for high-tech growth, soon there will probably be even fewer people working the fields and more punching the factory time clock.
Finally this week, the Geneva Motor Show, where you can see the cars you'll be driving in a few years' time, and indeed the ones you'll probably never drive, but wish you could. Maybe like this from Formula One specialists McLaren. It's the new 675 LT road car with a top speed of 330 kilometres per hour. McLaren plans to build 500 of them. If you want one, you'll need to find around $350,000 for it. Not to be outdone, Ferrari unveiled the 488 GTB, the first turbocharged car Ferrari's made in more than a decade, again using F1 technology. And at $55,000 cheaper than the McLaren, clearly a bargain. But there's another word doing the rounds at Geneva: disruption. That is, disruption to the traditional car market from the likes of Google, Apple and Uber. The tech giants are developing their own autonomous vehicles, and even though they are some way off, we wondered if it's something the auto industry really needs to think about. Let's ask Carlos GHOSN. He is the CEO of Renault NISSAN, who is at the Geneva Motor Show. Carlos, first off, how was 2014 for you?
Well, 2014 has been a year of growth for Renault Nissan, and a year also of profitability, where most of the objectives, if not all the objectives that were announced to the market, have been met. So I think it was a year of progress.
OK, good. You are a mainstream car maker, as we know, but as the likes of Google and Apple and Uber try to get into the market, does this worry you?
No, on the contrary, I'm very curious to see what companies, highly respectable, highly capable, outside the car industry are going to be able to bring to the car industry. I think this industry is about innovation and about creativity. And the more there are people doing inroads and bringing new ideas, the better we all will perform. So I think it's with a lot of curiosity and expectation that we're going to see what kind of product they're going to bring to the market.
But how important is technology for a car? Are buyers looking for reliability, or do they want all of that tech?
Oh, I think they want both. I don't think you have anybody who's going to say, if you offer him technology and reliability, is going to say, no, I don't want one of them. Reliability is very important at all the level of the market, no matter if you are in entry-level product or premium, and technology is going to determine, in fact, if you are in the game or not. Whatever we're talking about, low-emission cars or zero-emission cars, connected cars, autonomous cars, technology is going to be really driving the offer and driving the demand.
You, Renault Nissan that is, has spent a lot of money in Russia recently. How are the sanctions and the downturn affecting the company?
I think the fact that the Russian market is going down, our estimate is that by 2015 we're going to have something between 20 and 30% of decline in the Russian market. It's affecting all car makers. Obviously it affects Renault Nissan more than other because we are the largest car maker in Russia, particularly through our alliance with Avtovaz, the maker of the Lada brand. This being said, this market fell very sharply in 2014 and 15 for two reasons. First, the sanction. The second is the oil price. But let's remember that the market which fell very quickly, also a market which is going to recuperate very quickly. So we're getting ourselves ready for the recovery. In the meantime, we are improving competitiveness of our offer and localizing our production to hedge a little bit the risk coming from a weak ruble. So we're in good shape for the recovery.
Okay, and what about your brands in other emerging markets? Places like Russia, I guess, but I don't know, Turkey, say?
I think we are both in Russia and Turkey and most of the emerging markets, we are gaining market share, which is independently of the growth or decline on this market, means that our offer is gaining traction. And our obviously ambition in terms of market share are much higher than this. We're going to continue our product offensive and also the localization of our production in the emerging market. So you can expect us to be a much bigger player in emerging market in the next 5 to 10 years.
Carlos GHOSN, thank you. And that is our show for this week, but there's more for you online at aljazeera.com/CTC. That'll take you straight to our page, which has individual reports, links and entire episodes for you to catch up on whenever you want. You can also get in touch with us by tweeting either me at Kamal AJE, our business editor is at Abid Oliver Ali, and do use the hashtag AJCTC when you do. Or just drop us an email. Counting the Cost at aljazeera.net is the address. But that is it for this edition of Counting the Cost. I'm Kamal Santamaria from the whole team. Thanks for joining us. The news on Al Jazeera is next.